The title of the talk is Organic Evolution Problems and Challenges. Particularly to the students, I will tell that whenever some hypothesis or theory emerges and it finds its ways into textbook, unfortunately, it creates a belief system. And this belief system is what drives our research also. And many a times we don't question the established theories. And if you look at the research papers published, which are of very high quality, you will always find that those papers have challenged some or the other belief system. And if you look at the history of paleontology, the history is full of facts where people challenged a particular belief, including the discovery of conodonts from the Thal phosphorites, which brought a change in the age of Kroll-Thal sequences from Mesozoic to Precambrian, Cambrian. But for 200 years, we were happy with Kroll-Thal being Mesozoic. So what happens that whenever some belief system persists for longer, then we are biased to think in that direction only. I have no intention to challenge the Darwinism or organic evolution. I'm just telling you that any theory which is now prevailing in the society, in the science, always try to question. And then and only then you may get some new things. If you believe it, then you are a religious person. You can't change your religion. Whatever is there, it is the faith. You don't challenge your religion with logic. You believe it. So in science, please don't be very religious and don't believe everything. And before I start the talk, let me tell you, I believe in organic evolution, but I'll tell you how we can question it also. I have this very good depiction of 4 people which I like very much. They were the very founders of bringing paleontology into the limelight of geological time scale. If you look at the leftmost, Roderick Murchison and Adam Sedgwick, these were 2 friends who used to work in the Wales, one working in the North Wales and the other working in the South Wales. And they classified the Welsh sequences. And one, the Sedgwick, he named the Cambrian, and while Murchison named the Silurian. And these were based on mostly the fauna, the trilobites. And then they were not able to identify many fossils which were there in the Welsh sequences. And thus, Cambrian and Silurian were only 2 periods for almost 6 decades because of the identification of the fossils was not complete. And to tell you who was Adam Sedgwick, you will be amazed that he was PhD guide of Charles Darwin. Just like Rajiv Nigam is guide of Dr. Rajni Pancha. So Charles Darwin's guide, Adam Sedgwick, and his friend Murchison, they were not able to identify the upper Cambrian fossils and lower Silurian fossils. And it took almost 60 years when Charles Lapworth came, born in 1842, and 1879, Lapworth identified the graptolites, and he carved out the upper part of Cambrian and lower part of Silurian into what we know today as Ordovician. This is the power of fossil. One thing. Second thing, the problem is the organic evolution is non-linear. It is not that every year or every million year or every 10 million years, things will happen. They can happen 10 events in 1 million year or maybe 10 million years, no event. Is it okay? Audio is okay? Okay.
Yes, sir, it's okay.
So geological time scale, which is based on the organic evolution, is also non-linear. Sometimes the students of BSc, they ask us, what is this geological time scale? We have 4.6 billion year old Earth. Let us say 1 million year, 2 million year, 3 million year, and so on up to recent. No, this is not. If you start writing your biography, you don't write what did you do in the first year you were born, first day, Monday, Tuesday, Sunday. No. You write your biography when you pass high school, matriculation, graduation, when you get married, when you have children, when you get divorced, when you get remarried. All these events make your biography. Like the Earth also. The Earth has non-linearity in its events, and that is why geological time scale is non-linear. So with due respect to Murchison, Sedgwick, Darwin, and Lefferts, we proceed and show you. Let us take a Cambrian system, the chronostratigraphic unit. Here you find the duration, which is written in red. You find that some stages are 9 million years, some stages are 5, some are 4. That means the stages, the series, they are of unequal duration. And this unequal duration is what is non-linear. Linear means a straight line where the slope is same. No, it is not. And you will find the Cambrian is so long that even compares with Cenozoic era. So no era, no period, no system, no series in geological time scale is of equal duration. Why? Because the organic evolution itself is non-linear. So this is the first point, first problem, which I wanted to talk about. Now let us come to the organic evolution. So first is, what is evolution and what is involution? Involution term you don't listen in geology. Involution term was first used by Swami Vivekananda in his book, that whatever evolves ultimately involves. Just like if you see the Big Bang Theory, that the singularity where the universe explodes, expands, and then ultimately again coalesces to a single point where the gravitational collapse happens and again it expands. That is the oscillating theory of universe. But this you can see even in daily life. A seed is ready to sacrifice itself beneath the ground, goes, leaves, then tree, and then tree again gives you the seed. So this cycle goes on. If you look at the fetal growth, the embryo, and ultimately the man sitting here, and then again the man gives the embryo. This is the organic world. In inorganic world also you see the oceans, they are giving the clouds. Clouds are carried by the winds. They precipitate groundwater, river. Ultimately, it goes all to the ocean. So this whole idea of involution and evolution, this was also there in our Upanishads. That whatever is evolved was involved somewhere. Say, I tell you, if you take a seed of the banyan tree or a mango tree, the seed is an involved tree. That means the tree is there, but you don't see it. It is involved. It is there. The whole seed is a tree, but the tree needs time to grow. So this is in ontogenetic stage, that means life stage of an individual or even in inorganic world, we see that involution is there. It is only we have to imagine that something, even in society, your problems for the youngsters, your problems are involved at this age of 20. They will be evolved if you don't tackle them well. So with time only, the involution becomes evolution. And once the evolution reaches acme, it becomes again inborn. So this is a very important aspect of evolution. And if you go to the Huttonian uniformitarianism, Hutton said no vestiges of a beginning, no prospects of an end. Now, many people don't understand that why his follower, Charles Lyell, used to believe that all the species which were extinct, they will reappear again. Because if you represent no vestiges of beginning, no prospects of an end by a geometric figure, the geometric figure is always a circle which has no beginning and no end. And if you put the organism in a circle, whatever arrow you make from ape towards man, dinosaur towards ape, fish towards dinosaurs, trilobite towards fish, the arrow keeps on moving. That means, again, what Lyell believed, the trilobites will appear, fish will appear, dinosaur will appear, and this whole will be a circle. This is what is gradualism. This is what is uniformitarianism. Against George Cuvier's catastrophism, who said that things can happen by catastrophes. Things have no precursors. And gradualists and catastrophists, they are still there. They fight. Which one is true? Well, if you look at the organic evolution, the fossil record, you will find both are true. Now here is the man with longest beard is Charles Darwin. And Charles Darwin was third in his generation who is accredited with discovering organic evolution. Is it true? Of course not. Charles Darwin's father, Robert Darwin, was a physicist, a doctor, medical doctor. And his father, Erasmus Darwin, was also a medical practitioner. Charles Darwin's son, Harvard Darwin, his son, Galton Darwin, his son, Henry Darwin. Henry Darwin only died in 1992. So if you look at the ancestry of this beautiful lineage, 10 of these were in Royal Society fellows. The gene is carried through. The gene is carried through. The evolution itself is depicted by Darwin's family. And come to the ancestor Darwin. An ancestor Darwin is here. And this is what Darwin believed. You can see the two appendages in front and two behind, and they are just like the hands and legs. And these are the ancestors. These are the organic evolution. This is how we have come. Who discovered evolution? Was it Charles Darwin? Well, if you see the lectures and readings by Ned Friedman of Harvard, he has compiled the entire history of evolutionary thoughts. And you will be amazed to believe that Darwin was the 70th evolutionist. And before Darwin, many people had this wonderful idea of natural selection, struggle for existence, survival for the fittest. Darwin was influenced by the ambience, as Darwin promulgated that the organisms, they are influenced by the ambience. Darwin himself was a victim of its ambience. His grandfather, Erasmus Darwin, wrote the Zoonomia, in which he discussed about the natural selection, organic evolution. Alexander Moritzky, who is an ignored person in science, he wrote a wonderful book on the reflections of the natural history and species. And it's a wonderful book in which he discussed many aspects of what Darwin said. Then Alfred Russel Wallace, an FRS, he was a co-discoverer of Darwin, but look at the humbleness. Russell was working in our provinces in Malaya Peninsula, Indonesia, and there he came out with the idea of organic evolution, he prepared a manuscript and sent it to Darwin. And it is not that the Darwin did not acknowledge Russell. Darwin did acknowledge, but ultimately what comes, once you go to a restaurant, you order many food. What comes before you is a platter, wonderful food. You forget about how this food was cooked, what was the spice, what was the brand of the namak, what was the whole process. Only you enjoy the food. And this food was delivered by Darwin in the famous book, The Origin of Species. And this Origin of Species book is here. And I will advise all of you to read this Origin of Species. The original reading is always helpful. So Darwin, in his own writing, admitted that there were more than 33 people who earlier had similar views about evolution. But as I told you, the Plato, the most beautiful book in very simple language, was delivered by Darwin. But Lamarck, as you know, that Lamarck had similar ideas about organic evolution, and he wrote in Philosophy Zoology. But Lamarckism was different from Darwin. Lamarck used to believe that within the lifetime of an individual, if the individual is trying to gather food from height, the individual is going to increase the height during its lifetime. And then in reproduction, the individual will transmit this trait to its offspring, which is not true scientifically. Lamarck also wrote, but the idea that it cannot be that Darwin did not read Lamarck's book. It read, but Darwin came with Origin of Species quite later. There was a small time where both of them lived. Lamarck was a French, and you can see that the French magazine, which is in English is called The Little Moon by André Gille. It is a satire magazine. They published this front page showing this Darwin because they were favoring Lamarck. So the Origin of Species and the Philosophy Zoology, they were almost a competitor for some time. So the problem one now with this background is a very simple problem. Anybody who has little bit knowledge of science can appreciate it. Look at the inorganic world. Inorganic world gives you repetitive condition. The temperature fluctuates, the sea level fluctuates, the ice sheets melt, the ice sheet grow, the ice sheet melt, the ice sheet grow. The glaciation comes, the deglaciation comes. Carbon dioxide rises, carbon dioxide reduces. At the time of Antarctic ice sheet development at the Oligocene-Eocene boundary, the carbon dioxide was 750 ppm. Before that, it has gone up to 1500 ppm, 3000 ppm, now 410 ppm. So what I want to say is the inorganic world is repetitive. If you look at Vindhyan supergroup, sandstone, shale, sandstone, shale, sandstone, shale. By looking at the sandstone, you can't say what is its age. Limestone can form in any time. Sandstone can form any time. The rocks don't have temporal characteristics. For some rocks, like an orthosite or banded iron formation. But if you look at the organic world, which according to Darwin was controlled by inorganic world, natural selection, the organic world amazingly did not repeat it. Why? We did have repetitive conditions. So if any evolution occurred during carbon dioxide maxima, glacial maxima, warm period, then this evolution did not reverse itself with time. When the conditions were similar to the past, the evolution did not look back. This is the difference between the repetitive and non-repetitive character. And that is a problem in organic evolution. If you attribute all organic evolution to the ambience and the pressure and the stress on the organism, then a natural consequence is that whenever the situation returns, the organism can have the same morphology, same forms, what Charles Lyell used to believe. This is problem one. Now, problem two is the natural selection. Natural selection was beautifully defined by Darwin. It is not the strongest of the species that survives, nor the most intelligent of the species survives. I will come to this nuisance of Chat GPT at the end of my talk. It is not the intelligent species which survives, but the one most responsive to change that survives. This is survival of the fittest. And Darwin differed from Lamarckism that the natural selection selects only those species which are stronger individuals, and the other, the weaker, they die. And thus the genes which is transmitted is from the stronger ones. But look at the most revered ancestors of our time, the Salkhan stromatolites, very close to Banaras. You can see the conophytons there. The earliest form of life, the cyanobacteria. Now you can see the stromatolites forming now in Shark Bay in Australia. That means the ancestor is still there to see how you are doing. And you can see the algal bloom, cyanobacteria, in the modern water. So this is also a problem, that if we owe our origin to the earliest form of life, then how the earliest form of life still is surviving and not affected by the audience. That means there is more to organic evolution than the natural selection, survival for the fittest, struggle for existence, because our most ancient ancestor is still there. You can see the stromatolites being formed today, and the stromatolites are, if you go to Birbal Science Institute of Paleobotany, you can see Archean stromatolites also. So this is problem two. Now, problem three was that at what level the natural selection comes. And this is a famous book by Richard Dawkins. Richard was also influenced by Darwin, and he wrote a book, The Selfish Gene. And I will read only the last one. Is it the selfish species, selfish group? At what level the nature interacts? What kind of interaction at what level? Is it at the species level or group level? And then comes later the DNA. If you look at perception of the organism, the Homo sapiens sapiens, as we are called, are we a group of organisms? I will say yes. This is my personal belief. Since my heart can work in other person, since my lungs can work in other person, my eyes can work in other person, my liver can grow a liver in other person, and you know that organ donation, every organ can work in, many of the organs can work in other person. So who is dead then? That means we are a collection of organisms. And if you go by the cells, we have trillions of cells in our body. And those who know biology, they know that every cell is an entity. It is an entity. Once you get infected, you can see on YouTube how your white blood cell chases the bacteria and engulfs it. You don't have, he does not ask consent from you. The moment you get infected, your white blood cells start chasing those bacteria and they eat it. They don't need your consent. That means they are independent. So cells are independent, organs are independent. They can be transferred from one to other. So at what level the natural selection works? After the discovery of the double helix structure of DNA in 1953 by Watson and Crick, the evolution was looked again in a different manner. Origin of Species, Darwin's once he wrote 1859. There was no discovery like DNA. Now I ask you all a question. If DNA is responsible for transmitting all the traits from the parents to the descendants, then where is the evolution? Well, evolution is there. There is some hidden mechanism, mysterious mechanism by which our interaction with the environment, ambience, is communicated to our DNA. And this is what I discussed with a very famous biologist, who is a very top-rated biologist from Indian Institute of Science. He said, we never thought about it. Yes, but since evolution is a very slow process, it takes time. Maybe after 10,000, 20,000, 50,000 years, we will see the effect of this climate deterioration on our organs. Maybe we will grow a lung with more capacity to filter carbon dioxide. This is what I think of. So this is also an organic evolution after the discovery of DNA, that how we communicate to our DNA that something is changing. Is DNA aware of climate change? Or organs are aware of climate change? Or cells are aware of climate change? We don't know. So organisms awareness and DNA awareness. And I'll not skip to mention that if you look at the biography of Watson and Crick, they discovered DNA in 53, but they were influenced by a book. This book is this very famous book by Erwin Schrödinger. Erwin Schrödinger, you might be knowing, got Nobel Prize for quantum mechanics. Erwin Schrödinger was a physicist. He wrote a book on what is life. And both Watson and Crick, they acknowledged that the whole motivation to discover the DNA structure they got from Schrödinger's book, who was a physicist, and he wrote a book on life. And do you know, Schrödinger was influenced by what? Schrödinger's equation on which he got Nobel Prize, that is one equation. Schrödinger was influenced by Upanishads. And Schrödinger has written in his biography that all the ideas which he has developed, he was motivated and inspired by Upanishads. So how these one book influences the generation, the biologists, the physicists, the chemists, this is well out of context, but I wanted to mention. Now coming to the end part of my lecture, I am a micropaleontologist. So here is a problem. The problem is, here is Globorotalia minardiae, everybody is familiar. I have taken a very familiar example. Globorotalia minardiae is the ancestor of Globorotalia limbata and multicamerata. Minardiae has given rise to limbata in phylogeny, and limbata by increasing number of chambers given rise to multicamerata. But as Zifeli and Scott in 1986 have written a big volume on Globorotalis, they said that the experimentation of the Minardiae form species to increase the number of chambers failed. What does it mean? That if Planktic foraminifera was doing experiments in late Pliocene to increase the number of chambers in its evolutionary trait, these both, they became extinct at the northern hemisphere glaciation, but the ancestor still continues. So what is Darwin? What is adaptability? And what is experiment? That a small planktic foraminifera doing experiment, increasing number of chambers, the evolved form becomes extinct, the ancestor continues, and you can find Globorotalia minardiae in thermocline waters of the modern ocean. That is another problem. Similar problem with this Globorotalia cruciformis. If you look at, this is a keeled form, and its descendant Truncaltonoides, which is found in modern water, is also a keeled form. And they form a very important fossils for biozonation. But Globorotalia cruciformis gave rise to Globorotalia tosansis, which is completely non-keeled. And their evolutionary gradualism is so nicely depicted that you get all sorts of plexus form between cruciformis and tosansis. But again, the experiment of growing a non-keeled form failed, and at 0.6 million years, tosansis became extinct, but Truncaltonoides continued. That means, again, the experiment failed. So should we attribute it to natural selection, ambience change, I don't know. There are problems. And this is what is phyletic gradualism, that we have in microfossils depicted phyletic gradualism against punctuated equilibria, where you get suddenly a species without any connection to the ancestors' morphology. And last example is of spectabilis, Puleniatina spectabilis, which evolved in the equatorial Pacific, but we don't find it in Indian Ocean or even the Atlantic Ocean. And the planktic gene pool could not migrate. So what was the oceanographic condition which gave rise to Puleniatina spectabilis is still unknown, that why this species is endemic to equatorial Pacific. So these are many problems in microscopic world also. And last but not the least, we have two hypotheses where it shows that not the ambience only puts the pressure on the organism, but it is the organism also puts pressure on the ambient. And two important things is Gaia hypothesis given by James Lovelock. Lovelock died at the age of 103, 2 years back. He gave that a Gaia, that means the organisms change the ambience to suit it. That means the organisms change the entire ambience to suit their own livelihood. That means the ambience is not putting pressure on the organism, but the organism is directing the ambient. And with that, we have claw hypothesis, which is given by Charlson, Lovelock, Henry, and Warren. From the first letter, this is claw hypothesis. This says that whenever there's a rise in temperature, the coccolithophores or the phytoplanktons, they multiply, they give rise over DMS, dimethyl sulfate, which creates clouds. The clouds stops radiation and then it cools down. So it's a negative feedback. So here you have a case where the organisms, they are evolving the ambience. It is not the organisms themselves evolving. They are there. Coccolithophores are there for millions of years. So this is reverse is also true. So this is the concluding slide, epilogue with many questions. How many fauna and flora survived Permian Triassic and KT extinction? Many. If you look at the Permian Triassic extinction events, recently, only 3 days back, there is a paper in Science about beautifully preserved fauna and flora. And this paper is published in Science only 3 days back. 1 million years after Permian Triassic bound, which is supposed to create 96% of the extinctions in marine. So this is a question, then why not all became extinct? And if you look at many of the forms at even KT boundary, they survived. They were not affected by them. Second thing is coiling. Many a times we are fascinated by the studies of Kate Darling and others. The Neogloboquadrina sinistral should be called as something else. So dextral should be called. Okay. Doesn't make any difference to the paleontologist, because if I call Neogloboquadrina pachyderma as Ashutosh Kumar Singh, our paleoceanographic interpretations will not change because we are taking the abundance in the fossil record. So many types of genetic studies are being made. Okay, for academic purpose, it's okay. But if sinistral and dextral, they are different, no problem. And for the youngsters, let me tell you, it was not Kate Darling who discovered there two species. It was an Indian from NIU. I will give the reference, who first called that these two coiling varieties are different. I don't want to take the name because that person is ignored. But if you look at Planck Forum database or worm, you will get that reference. The Indians don't refer, but they refer that this was the first person. Then a very interesting question to the young person. I asked you whether eyes came first or ear came first in the paleontological record. Well, if you look at the ambience, the light is something which was exploited by the eyes, and sound is something which is exploited by ears. So, well, literature shows that the eyes, they predate the ears by 40 million years. Why? And if there were no eyes, how the organisms knew that there is a light and we should grow eyes? This is the problem. because the organisms have a desire to evolve. And if the organisms are blind, how they knew that there is light and thus we must grow wise? So these all go against the general belief. So organic evolution is true, but many of the traits, many of the concepts must be modified. If somebody doesn't have ear, he will have no even sense of sound. So how a organism can grow ear to listen to something which he does not know? So the ears, eyes, the blind trilobites, the eye trilobites. Then Ernest Haeckel's, the famous word ontogeny recapitulates phylogeny. And can it be verified in all organisms? And if you look at, it cannot, but at many times it can. And that gives rise to heterochrony. If you look at Professor Jayakrishna's paper on the ammonoid chronology, heterochrony is there. That means the youngster form, the organisms, they resemble their ancestors. And it's case even in human evolution also. And last one, organic evolution and chat GPT. In paleontology, this is also a concept that the organisms which don't use any organ, they lose it. So the youngster, please don't use chat GPT and all these things because you will be losing your whole intellect. Artificial intelligence is a misnomer. It is a complete misnomer. I can tell you, you look at Bernard Kastrup, you look at Leo Guerra, you look at Donald Hoffman, you listen to all these lectures. It's complete misnomer. It's artificial computing, no intelligence there. Intelligence is something which feels. Artificial intelligence doesn't feel. It is you feed the feeling into artificial. So the chat GPT, I heard that many of the dissertations are being written by chat GPT. So you may lose your capacity of the brain also if organic evolution is true. So if believing Darwinism, don't use all this. And can paleontology teach us to be healthy? Yes. If you see the ontogenetic evolution, we are getting involved now because of our lifestyle, many things. So there is one evolution from amoeba to man, and there is one evolution that with age, we should not lose the capacity of our organs, the thinking, the interest, the music, chatting with friends, many things. If you don't do it and involved in social media, always sticking to your computers, living in a two-dimensional world, the paleontologist said that your body will be suited to two-dimension and not to three-dimension. Thank you all. Namaskar.